Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Keep It Personal. If you are a marketing leader and your customers are harder to engage, even when you create great content, you're not alone. People aren't tired, they are just overwhelmed. And when your message gets ignored, the cost is real. This show is about how modern leaders cut through the noise, make people feel something, and create communication that moves people to action. And if your team wants to do this at scale, Personal helps you turn ignored communication into on brand personalized videos people care about without adding more work. And today's guest is someone you'll want to learn from, especially if you are a marketing leader trying to engage with limited resources, let's say, or trying to drive engagement with limited resources. Marianna Bryce, did I pronounce your name,
Yeah,
your last name
Marianna
especially?
Bryce. Yep, you're
Okay,
good.
wonderful. So she's the VP of marketing at Nations Roof, and she has built modern marketing engines in some of the most, I would say, traditional and complex industries out there in North America. She knows what it takes to rebuild a marketing function from zero, lead small teams, support field reps, and create communication customers actually pay attention to. So if you've ever had to do more with less, explain, let's say, complex work in a simple way, or try to make content feel personal and on brand so that it drives action, you're going to want to be in this conversation, to stay in this conversation. Mariana, welcome to Keep It Personal. How's it going?
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
I'm glad to see that. So, for people who do not know you yet, your path wasn't a straight line or hasn't been a straight line. You've been an entrepreneur, if I'm not mistaken, part of an internal agency, and an award-winning marketer, and now a VP. If you had to describe the common theme, let's say, in your career, what would it be?
Ooh, common theme. Definitely is not just accepting the way things are. I think there's a curiosity of
Hmm,
why are we doing things, period, and then why are we doing them this way?
hmm,
So kind of not always just going into a situation being like, oh, that's just how we're doing things. Got it. But that curiosity of asking why are we doing them this way? Um, and why are we doing it? Period,
okay.
right? Our time is precious, and there's plenty of things to do, but making those decisions on what you spend your time on. So I think that's carried me throughout my career, quite honestly.
Okay. I love that. In the end, you make it easier for me because it sets the stage for everything we'll explore today. So
Great,
engagement is harder than ever.
sure.
And in traditional industries like roofing or construction, like in your world, what does this engagement look like for you?
Engagement to me, you can talk about things like personas and what is the general audiences and customer segments, but in the end, those are just people, right? People
Mhm.
in jobs that they may or may not have a complete comfort level and vast knowledge of how to do those jobs, right? Um, there's certainly generationally as the workforce kind of turns and grows, there's things that individuals just may not know about the roles that they're in or the things that they're responsible for, and they may be afraid to ask. They don't know who to ask. I mean, there's certainly AI things you can ask now, but um, I always kind of come back to what do people want to know? What would they be curious about? And that will get them into to engage, right? Because once
Mhm.
you kind of open that door, it's like a conversation, even if it's them reading a piece of material that you put out, or just an FAQs. It's a way for them to feel seen and say that I was curious about that, but I didn't really know how to ask or how that was related. So I kind of always bring it back to that. Um, is it something that someone truly is interested in knowing?
Hmm. And that goes like for both customers and your team or within your organization. Is
Sure.
that okay?
Marketers have, I've always thought marketers have internal customers, which is
Hmm.
generally the sales team, your leadership, and then you have your external end user kind of customers, right? And you
Hmm.
certainly have to treat them both very similarly, with
Hmm.
internal campaigns, right? Trying to drive in the kind of behaviors that you want to drive. And then same with customers, or what are the behaviors and things that you want them to do, and kind of the path you want them to go down.
I don't think many people think about like the people within your organization as internal customers.
Hmm.
What's your perspective from
Well,
that
that was
angle?
the in-house agency model, right? So, in one of my past roles, that was very clear with the team that we wanted to build that model, and that's what it is, right? You basically you view what the needs are of those internal customers and say, how
Mm,
can we make this work? How do we make this usable for them? Um, yeah, it's that's a pretty key. And even if you're not running a full-on huge marketing team like an agency, right, where you have a content manager, you have a creative person, you have a writer, you can have all those people, or you can have very few team members.
mm,
Um, but as long as you don't forget that, you know, marketing, we're a little bit a step away from customers a lot of the times, right? We're not necessarily customer facing. So serving that full way down to the customer is important.
okay. So for instance, in a private equity environment where I'm assuming timelines are short, but the
Very.
impact grows like fast or should grow fast.
Mhm.
How do you balance that pressure with doing the right uh, thing now, but also thinking about the long term work or the long term vision, impact, what is expected then?
It's an everyday trade-off decision, right? And also when new things kind of come to your plate, that's the constant day-to-day prioritizing your time and saying, does this have value? And am I going to see that value now? And will it compound if I do spend my time here? Will I get an immediate short-term win? But is it building towards that greater horizon that we're working towards? And you
Mm,
balance, and sometimes it's just a short-term gain with not a lot of value long term, but it's important short term, right? So, but it's it's a juggle. But it's prioritization.
mm. So with that, for instance, with what you are currently doing now, like all this season, you started on your role. Um, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at some point this year,
In July.
when customers, or with what you're learning right now from the new audience, let's say internal and external, when customers, or and even your field team, for example, or teams, ignore some kind of content campaign or the short to midterm vision for maybe a product launch or reshaping a product or bringing that product to the market, where do you see the impact, also taking into account the long term goal, if that makes sense?
If they don't, you're asking if they don't necessarily, if we put something out, like a campaign material packs or something like that, and they don't necessarily use it,
Hmm.
or know how to use it, kind of put it into their work streams, that kind of thing. Like, is that
Hmm.
what you mean?
For example,
Um,
yes.
that to me means something missed the mark, right? We didn't ask good enough questions on the outset. When you're talking to those internal customers, right? There's a bit of, voice of customer there of what's the need, what are you trying to accomplish? So if they're not using it, that either they don't know how to find it, they don't know how to use it if they know where it exists, or it wasn't exactly what they were asking for, or it doesn't work into those naturally into those conversations and those touch points they have with the customer. So something went awry. And that's not to say like scrap it completely, it's a bad idea, but
Mm-hmm.
go back, because you can always optimize, right? You can always say, well, why isn't this hitting the mark? Is this is the are the key points that we're trying to make with this, is that not landing? Is it not in the customer language? Is it the wrong things that we're focusing on? Something went awry. So you go back and fix. And then you see it grow and it starts to get used. And sometimes it takes a little bit for, you have different tools, right? There's all kinds of different things that you can use now to interact with a customer. All kinds of different content formats, communication channels, everything. So there's so many different ways to do things now.
Mm.
Um, you kind of have to hone in and say, did we make a good decision there? Is this in the channel that they're used to communicating? Right? There's a lot of texting that goes on now. Is that a format that we need to look to go to? Things like that. So just going back and saying, where did we kind of veer off the path
Hmm.
that would keep this usable?
Hmm. The texting is back, eh?
Hmm.
I see that a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why we or I say that when people don't somehow feel the message and how that message is shared, like channel type of content, etc., they don't act, and in the
Mhm.
end, silence can be a quite expensive item, let's say,
For sure.
to have in a to-do list. So you stepped into companies, if I'm not mistaken, where marketing somehow needed to be rebuilt or reshaped,
Hmm.
let's say.
Hmm.
When you walk into that situation, what do you look at first?
Mm. What are the goals of the company? Because ultimately, that's why we're here, right? As a function, we're supporting the business goals. So you absolutely have to start there.
Hmm.
And then there's basic things that any marketing function needs to do, like offer to the business, basic things, and then you start deciding for those business goals, how can marketing help achieve those? What does that look like? And you start building the foundation and whatever that looks like, right? Because to me, I mean, marketing can jump in and help with any kind of functional team. It can help with HR, recruiting, right? That's part of branding as well. People want to come and work for your company, work with that culture. So there's lots of ways that you can help the business. So you have to dial in with what are the current goals and where are they going, right? Where are goals in 3 to 5 years as well. But it has to stay. That has to be the first anchor to kind of feed down,
Hmm.
just to know where to start.
Hmm. And how do you decide what to fix first so everything else
Mhm.
becomes somehow, I don't know if the right word is easier, because sometimes maybe it's not easier, but it's the best move. So how do you know where to start?
Use the word fix. Sometimes there's not things to fix.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's things to start doing. Definitely walked into a lot of environments that it's a little bit of like, well, why aren't we doing this? This is a low resource activity, high gain.
Hmm.
Immediately start doing those things, right? So as you start coming down from the goals, you start looking at what are the inputs, right, for what you're trying to accomplish. Low resource but high impact. Move on those fast, right?
Hmm.
You also want some internal wins to build trust. As I'm working specifically in these traditional commercial construction spaces, trust is really important. Again, with those internal customers, for sure with the external customers, but internal customers, there has to be a bridge built of we're all trying to accomplish the same things here, and I'm here not just to support you in a way of like, do you need a flyer? Awesome. I'll make you a
Hmm.
flyer. Like I can make you a flyer. I can absolutely do that. But why do you need the flyer? Like what are you trying to accomplish with your sales goals, things like that. Um, so it's definitely um, gaining trust is very important, right? Because the internal customers are going to give you that internal that they have that information about the customer that unless you're doing a lot of ride-alongs, you're not necessarily going to know the intricacies, the nuances of just what customer conversations are actually like. So to get that two-way communication, they have to trust you, and
Hmm.
to build trust, it has to be a little bit of like, show me just show me how are you going to help me, and so you
Hmm.
start throwing out some things that are immediate impact, like flyers, but
Hmm.
also equipping them with, I mean, today's in it, social, giving them social post ideas, tips and tricks, best practices there, getting them a comfort level. Just it's building trust.
Hmm.
That's a big important because it can stop you in your tracks if you don't have
Hmm.
a internal trust built within the internal teams. It won't go very far.
Hmm. It takes time sometimes to build that trust
Sure.
as well. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes that is a thing you have to fix
Hmm.
if the trust had been burned previously. And that's a lot. Honestly, I love ride-alongs. That's part of it too. You get to know the customer, but you're also building the trust with the sales rep. So like, I'm comfortable and respect the fact that you have to kind of get in the trenches and do a series of hitting a bunch of cities or whatever, making customer visits, going to trade shows, showing them that you're not afraid and that you're capable of being there with them, and that you have a lot of respect for what they do.
Hmm.
That helps a lot.
Hmm. So, for instance, you've modernized marketing in environments that don't seem to change fast, right? Versus, I don't know, SaaS company or
Mhm.
even agencies that are kind of moving people
Journey.
in and out all the time.
Hmm.
What does modernization really mean in traditional industries?
I mean, sometimes you can you can you can leapfrog, right? Not everything when you build the marketing function, there's like the foundational stuff we talked about that, right? So
Mhm.
foundational things that you have to do. Every marketing function has to do. As you start um, building that foundation and you start kind of adding the layers of complexity, you can pick where you want to really have a lot of like niche tactics, tools, things that you're trying um, that help you stand out. Because that is the benefit, right, of being in this environment is that it's very traditional. So if you can do something and execute it well, plan it really well, and execute really well, it's very memorable, right? And
Mhm.
that is like that's what branding is, right? Is be memorable.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of fast moving, but I feel like it's like fast moving in so many different ways and just kind of see what sticks. Whereas if you're more methodical and build towards specific capabilities, it's you can do the cool stuff too. You're just not doing a ton of the cool stuff. You're focusing
Hmm.
um, on what's the game? What are you going after?
Mhm.
Which is frankly the teams that I've been on that have been award winning. That's what we did, right? We focused the efforts. It was around a product launch and a brand refresh, things like that, where we really would say, okay, we can do some cool things, but what are the kinds of cool things that will be memorable,
Mhm.
um, but just not spread it too thin
Mhm.
because there's so many tools now, so many.
Hmm. And would you say from that angle that um, that modernization somehow helps to stand out in a specific industry or specific niche or market in terms of what the customer somehow perceives from a
Mhm.
brand perspective, mid to long
For sure.
term? Okay.
It still has to make sense though, right? So you can't go so far afield that it's like, well,
Hmm.
you're still in commercial construction, right? Like this is
Hmm.
not, um, I don't know, universal physics or something. I don't know, like so it's gonna still feel appropriate,
Hmm.
um, or it won't. Or it'll almost be like those jingles that are just kind of laughable, but then you can't remember whose jingle it was. You know what I mean? It didn't really resonate and pull back to that core. What are you trying to accomplish? If it doesn't
Hmm.
tie to the actual brand identity, it just kind of like disconnects, which is
Hmm.
pointless.
Okay. Okay. So I like the way you describe it because in the end it is adding clarity, but not more noise just because you can.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
instance, in the technology world, not just because the technology allows you to create at scale, for instance, that doesn't mean that you have to do
mm,
it that way. So one thing, and I believe you mentioned something about that a moment ago. I like is how you like the mindset in terms of does this make someone's job easier? Because in the end, you are taking into account someone else's plate. So
mhm,
how does that shape your marketing leadership and perhaps the
mhm.
campaigns or content you guys create and or have created?
So there's been a few different instances along the way, right? I think the most succinct way to say one example is you're always kind of you're listening with an ear of like, should I know what that acronym is? Does everybody know what that acronym is? Like, or does that should it actually take a step back and like raise your hand to say like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that acronym
Mhm.
means. That happened a lot in the engineering space.
Hmm.
And I think the longer you work somewhere, the more you get into the inside baseball language. I had a colleague who called it that, right? Inside baseball language. And you
Hmm.
have to be really, really careful to not use that in materials or, and just talk way over a customer's head. And then if you can take that even further back to just listen for those terms and say, "Ooh, that's something I need to expand on. That's something I need to explain."
Hmm.
That again, somebody would not necessarily know offhand stepping into a role.
Hmm.
Something like there was one instance where I was in a class and in one of the industries, and they said something about handing a door. I was like, I'm sorry, but like you said that like I should know what it is. Like, what does it mean to hand a door? That's just about the way
Hmm.
it swings or whatever. But it was
Hmm.
in the end, it's such a baseline thing. But I think there's just a lot of assumptions that we make about what people know
Hmm.
when you shouldn't, right? And you should just listen for those opportunities of like, or think of like when if you're talking to somebody and they start kind of don't really know what you're talking about anymore. Those kind of moments, right? So try to imagine just, what are those moments and what are those things that are worth kind of like expanding upon and then
Hmm.
building into that. And they get bigger and bigger, right? They can get they can get more complex. There's baseline things, right?
Hmm.
But as you get further, as they trust you, right? Because you're sharing that information with them to help them know how to make their decisions that they have to make every day.
Hmm.
And not in like a nefarious way of like guiding them towards a bad decision, but like here's the stuff that you need to know if you're
Hmm.
making these kinds of decisions and what are the ripple effects, right?
Hmm.
And then just to have a comfort level with the context around the decisions that you're making. I
Hmm.
would want that, right? So
Hmm. That's so. Throughout the year, for instance, on my end, I go through actually around our summer here in Spain. I'm personally based in Spain, so June, July, so on, and around this time of the year, I usually sit down and plan, go through web form submissions that we have had until that season. Let's say usually like the last 12 months or so, and see or try to find patterns in things people are requesting, the way they express,
mhm, mhm,
and kind of compare that with how they talk to us, like
mhm,
in the calls. Sometimes we have recordings, sometimes we don't, so we
mhm,
need to check the notes and all that. And because many times we are explaining things in one way,
mhm,
with our internal voice that have
mhm,
nothing to do with the way they express or the things they are, um, or what they understand from the offering and
mhm,
their needs.
mhm,
And sometimes that misconception, let's say, or that disconnect in the end cost sales, because
mhm.
we are not talking.
Not talking the
So
same
the
language.
product service does, yeah, it does what they want,
Mhm,
but we are not talking in the same language, let's say. So
Not the way it
could you
translates.
could you share a moment when perhaps, um, like a piece or some kind of campaign communication, etc., that that really landed when someone said, "This is exactly what I needed," and this could be from both perspectives, your internal clients and customers. And how do you work with in this case with field teams, or sales teams, to somehow measure that even beyond the sale, for instance?
So I guess that kind of starts with I went on a ride along in one of the previous roles where it was an engineered product, right? And a lot of the sales reps were engineers or civil or geotechnical engineers.
Hmm.
Um, and in this particular lunch and learn was at a general contractor office. And this was very early on in my role there, and there were slides up on the screen. Um, and one of the audience members raised his hand at one particular slide that had like the mathematical formula behind what our product did, and he was like, I don't understand any of that. I don't understand any of that. He said it in a different way, more colorful way, but he's like, I need you to dumb that down for me, right? I need you to dumb that down. And so it's it was I mean it was that was one way to look at how the product works, right? But then after that, I just, it kind of stuck with me whenever we would make something related to this product, that we talked about the value and visualization of that, that there are
Mm.
other ways to visually show exactly what the product does without showing the mathematical formula behind
Mm.
it, right? So we started doing things around like cross sections and um, just showing the math behind it.
Mm.
So I don't know, that's the first thing that jumped in my head. Not necessarily a specific campaign, but just whenever we
Mhm.
would do things through that, we made sure that the visual and the language matched, and was more understandable. Because you jumped into something that I think is quite profound, and that when somebody steps into a new role, when you take a new job, you learn there's a culture through the company, right? And you start
Mhm.
learning there's a language to the company. Every company has just like little things that like they call it this, or like one-on-one meetings can have different names depending on the company where you go, and different cadences, things like that. You start to learn those, just those particulars, but that's that's everywhere, right? And
Mm.
so the customer accounts where you're talking their language, it's that makes the marketing job really difficult sometimes, because language can be so specific to that one account that you kind of have to also like crack that egg
Mm.
to figure that out. But that's, again, where planning kind of comes in handy, and having good conversations, and starting that relationship with the customer before you have those bigger
Mm.
conversations, so that you're not getting to the sales pitch, right? And you're talking a
Mm.
completely different language. But just, you almost have to approach every customer in that way of like knowing that they have their own internal language of what they call things, and trying to like figure out what those things are, so you can just kind of start talking that way to them. Because in the
Mm.
end, you might be talking about the same thing. You're just calling it two different things.
Mm.
Um,
We're driven by stories in the end. So when people
mhm,
feel the message, somehow they act. And
mhm,
and for some
yeah,
people, I guess a mathematical formula could mean the world, and for other people, they could be lost in that world. So
yeah, right,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, there you
So
go.
when you're building, for example, a strong marketing engine with a lean or a small team, how do you decide what your team should own, where and where potentially like a partner
Mhm,
should perhaps help in that process while still keeping the same quality and brand consistency that the brand needs? So because there is some kind of balance there, and sometimes it's not easy to manage it, let's say.
mhm. Yeah, it's so starting with the business goals, as you start to prioritize what are the things that we need to do now, that have those immediate gains. What are the things that we need to start building now so that we can start compounding later?
Mhm.
Um, it that kind of tells you, you know, that kind of tells you how much do you need to be hands on with certain things. I have a graphic design background, so I'm a little more tethered to wanting to have a little more control over the branding, aesthetic,
Mm.
positioning, things like that. Um, but then I think, because I have a because I have a design background, and I've worked with my own clients
Mm.
in communicating and trying to get them to understand like what I need from them to be able to build them something, right?
Mm.
I can talk that language a little easier. So I have a little bit of comfort level with here's my vision for it, but I feel like I'm pretty decent at being able to communicate that vision, to
Mhm.
be able to outsource it if I need to, or just build
Mhm.
it on my own if I just want to, right?
Mm.
Um, so I think having a strong design is important to me, because I just people are so visual
Mm.
that you just have to start building those memory, right? Memory links, um, for people to just instantly like see certain shapes, certain colors, aesthetics, and they immediately know that it's your stuff,
Mm.
and being distinctive amongst your peers, in that way.
Mm.
Um, and then there's just, I mean, the SEO, AI AI stuff, that just, it's moving so fast that I think we have to stay dialed into it. But then there's, to me, a certain point where it just, you almost have to. I like to use partners for SEO and things like that, which
Mm.
is for deployment and tracking, because it's just labor intensive. But again, kind of keeping that control, that vision of what you want to accomplish, making sure it's working with the goals of what you're trying to accomplish. So just you have to be kind of nimble where you need to, where you know what you're trying to accomplish. And have if you want to run a small lean team, you have to be comfortable with outsourcing, but be a strong communicator.
Yeah, and I guess not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke with Brad Burgess, sorry, that he is the VP of Marketing at IST Management Services, and he also has a creative background, and I feel kind of identified because I also have a creative background, and somehow when you are in any type of marketing leadership position, you need to also find the balance or add resources or find help with certain things that perhaps are more methodical or that require more analysis. How do you find yourself, like, for example, things like SEO, perhaps that's it's an analytical field, it's creative a lot, and like to find new opportunities and how people communicate and find those angles, but also requires lots of data analysis to find those opportunities and trends and all that. How do you find yourself there, or how do you find that balance in the organizations you've gone through, let's say?
It kind of again comes back to a trust. We talked about it a little bit with internal customers, but with agencies, there's trust that if you're going to outsource something, you have to be very particular with the individuals that you choose, right? If you have a natural rapport with someone, and they can bring you a lot of that data analysis, and you go, okay, I see what you're saying, you see here, right? But like, here's my perspective on what I'm seeing, or like this is cool, but like it doesn't really matter. You know, it doesn't really matter to what we're kind of trying to accomplish. Is an indicator maybe, or is it just cool, but not necessarily helpful to the things that we're trying to accomplish? You have to be able to have that kind of communication back and forth with them to say, you know, here's what I'm seeing, and not just expect a report out and go, okay, great, I can just pop that into a deck and then done, right? You still have to be engaged. You still have to be engaged. You can't just completely outsource it and don't think about it, and keep dialing them in to where, you know, if you're veering off the path, keeping them dialed into, well, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes the target moves, right? It's like, okay, well, we actually need to pour a little more resource into here because some other things that are happening contextually in the business, like this is now a focus. Let's give this a focus for a few months, that kind of thing, and just being able to be open communication, and if they can be as agile as you need them to be, and not kind of gets bogged down in the process. Because you mentioned something earlier, private equity is very fast. You have to have anybody that you hire or outsource has to be ready to be as nimble as you have to be in this environment. It's fun and exciting. It's not for everyone, for sure. But they have that comfort level as well with changing course.
So you mentioned agile. So, for example, you've led teams with big goals, like when you led the expansion, if I'm not mistaken, on an industry-leading webinar program and product launches. Many people listening are in a similar situation. So they have limited resources, big goals. How do you think people can leverage today's marketing tech stack, let's say, from AI to something that could even be a bit more traditional, to be able to get there to those big goals, which obviously depends on every situation, long-term goals and all that. But how do you think small teams can kind of manage that? Because one of the challenges many organizations have right now is that, maybe 15 years ago, a CRM was maybe expensive, or a marketing automation tool was expensive, even for big organizations. Small departments usually maybe a more limited budget and all that. But nowadays, most tools are somehow available to almost everyone out there. So it's not a technical, or there's not a technical barrier anymore, I think, generally speaking. So with limited resources, I would say, what does modern marketing look like? And what are your top recommendations for similar leaders that are facing that situation? We have this to fix or not. We have big goals. Um, Markets are changing like crazy almost everywhere. So, what can we do? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, so where I am now, there were some things that were happening that again, you start with the why are we doing that? Why do we have that? Um, and you be ready to pull back from that.
Mhm.
I think there you can do generally speaking, there are a lot of tools that are out there, but a lot of the tools that we have can do many, many things, right? So taking a look at what you have and seeing if with a little work, maybe sometimes you have to do a little bit of work in it so that it does what you need it to do, whether it's sending an NPS survey or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, or if it's a webinar program, like looking at the tools you have and saying, can they actually do these things that I need it to do without having to bolt on something else, right? Because you
Mhm.
can start to drown in a tech stack really, really fast. And it can get expensive.
Mhm.
Um, but then the more tools you add, the more you have to resource maintaining those tools, keeping them
Mhm.
clean. I'm a little OCD when it comes to like file folders and tools that it just if it's messy, no one uses it or you can't really get the information that you need out of it. So
Mhm.
doing more with less, like asking your tools to work harder for you.
Mhm.
I think that's a really important thing from a marketing perspective because it can get
Mhm.
crazy out of control. And then all of a sudden you're hiring people just to maintain the tools themselves, and that just kind of gets a little you lose sight of the you lose sight of doing the actual marketing stuff, right? Where you're trying to
Mhm.
connect with people
Mhm.
that just happen to be prospective or existing customers, right? So
Mhm.
again, it comes back to just thinking about the person that you're trying like these are people that you're trying to connect with and reach out to. Like, what do you need to do to connect to that person, right?
Mhm.
What would help them kind of recognize you or help you stand out?
Mhm.
Um, not just was it cool? Was it a
Mhm.
cool tool to use?
Hmm. I like something Moss Hack, he's customer experience expert, said maybe a month or 2 months ago in a conversation. Um, and it was around, so think about it like first where you want to get, how you need to engage perhaps.
Mhm,
I'm rephrasing it, but in terms of engaging, communicating, etc., with the contact with your audience, and then from there go back in terms of, okay, what are the tools we need to do XYZ, but you are not defining first the tools to then force them to get to your goal. It's the other way around. You have chosen the goal, the type of maybe the journey,
mhm.
step, or whatever it is, the specific um, sentiment, emotion, and
Right.
so on that you need to build. And then, okay, what can help me do this that I already need, not the other ways
Yeah.
around. So I like that as well. So in your experience, where do companies under communicate in that customer journey actually? So, and do you find that there are missed opportunities? I don't know if in your industry or that you see in general.
Where we under communicate or
Correct.
hmm. I still do think a lot of the times it's we jump to things that we think they know when they don't necessarily know some of the baselines. Because somebody could have stepped into a new role as a new facility manager, right?
Yeah.
Um, they don't necessarily know the curveballs that are coming their way, right? Like, oh my gosh, what do you mean I have to worry about a
Hmm.
roof that's like, you know, is it under warranty? How would I know if it's under warranty? Stuff like that. Um, so I think to me, I like the nuggets where it's communicating the things that we shouldn't just assume that they know,
Hmm.
um, and how what resources are available to them, what decision making, what power they have in the decision making as well. right?
Hmm.
Because they also don't want them to feel like we'll just solve your problems. Because nobody likes to just be told, oh, I'm just going to solve this problem for you. Don't worry about it all. Like I've got it. Especially if you're outsourcing or paying for a vendor, it's unless you just know that person, you're going to want some kind of reassurances, and you're going to want some kind of stake in it, some empowerment in the decision.
Hmm.
Um, so it's helping them feel that empowerment and not just
Hmm.
feel like they're being told to buy something because they need it or scaring them into it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I like very baseline knowledge.
Hmm.
Um, and then as you get further into the decision making, just making sure they feel empowered for the choices that they do have. And sometimes that means making sure that they know all of the choices that are available to them, why you still think they should perhaps go this direction. And sometimes if you're a really good partner, sometimes you're not the solution,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes you go, look, this isn't our wheelhouse. You should really go with somebody who's a specialist in this way. I really appreciate when I have a partner vendor that tells me
Hmm.
that. I think maybe there's a way that they could figure it out, and they talk it amongst their team, and they just go, I can't. We probably can't do this in a way that would take care of you the way would want to take care of you. So we're going to say no. I love that kind of partnership. So why
Hmm.
wouldn't someone that I'm trying to go after also appreciate that kind of honesty and candidness and
Hmm.
empowerment?
Hmm. And also from a customer side, there are uh, different um, personas or different, even the buying group, etc. So different personalities, different needs, I guess, from a buying perspective. And uh, marketing also needs to communicate to I mean, depends on the type of product and
Hmm.
the how the length of the process, but communicate with different individuals with these different responsibilities, priorities, so that
Goals,
they
different
take
priorities.
the next step. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
it's nice when you can tell them how to talk to each other, because sometimes they don't know how to
Yeah.
talk to each other, right? Because
Yeah.
procurement's going to have a very different goal, right?
Yeah.
Than maybe the facility manager, right? So.
Yeah. 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 It's funny on our end when the first contact is procurement, for instance, or
Hmm.
when it versus when it is a technical someone versus when it's a creative someone versus a product someone versus a marketing someone.
Yeah.
So depending on who comes first, then our approach also changes because they all need different things, and then they are different individuals that are added as you advance in the process with them, and you build the trust, etc. And they all have different questions.
Hmm.
Okay, so you are active in LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and I don't remember when, but it was a few months ago. Um, uh, Something caught my attention about AI, and I think in my so my mental picture was that you were kind of A/B testing things on your own or with your team, and you were somehow expressing. It was some kind of diary of the process. I don't remember the exact content right now. So,
Hmm.
what's actually working for you and or for your team right now? So, how are you guys, or if you guys are using uh, some kind of AI? It's extremely diverse, wide, but are you leveraging somehow in for your marketing?
Leveraging AI
Yeah.
for it, for sure. There are certain things. I mean, it's the narrative right now, right? It can speed up the process of getting a first draft going, something like that. But then you
Hmm.
you ultimately are the person that kind of pushes it through and makes it start having some kind of technical resonancy. I very much think you need to know who your internal SMEs are as well. People that you can have help come up with ideas or prove something and say, like, is this actually the information that a customer would want to have? So you definitely have to have good technical SMEs, and that's a I mean that's a fast and easy way to say AI is jumping in. Um, it's it's a love hate. I definitely when when this when content marketing became a thing, right? And all of a sudden there started to be a lot of things that people could download and do a form fill for. um, it flooded the market, right?
Hmm.
And it wasn't always good stuff. There was just stuff that wasn't really of a lot of value out there. And it felt like AI was just going to take that and just like warp speed it, right? Like now there's going to be like so much noise,
Hmm.
so much just things that people could read. But in the end, people don't really, they don't read long format things generally,
Hmm.
right? They're going to want some kind of either an audio file, a video file generally, or some kind of visualization of it, to intake a lot of information. So
Hmm.
um, I like AI for a little bit of content for just helping kind of get a rough idea, something on paper, so you can go from there.
Hmm.
Um, but from a goal setting perspective, I really like using it as a devil's advocate. I push the ones that I use to say, what are my blind spots? What am I not like? What did I not think about here? Um, and just push me that way, because sometimes it'll throw in things and you think, well, that doesn't, it's okay, I didn't focus on that because I know why I didn't
Hmm.
focus on that. But I really like it to press it as a devil's advocate, because in the
Hmm.
end those are the best kind of colleagues, right? The ones that are willing to say, I mean, I feel like you missed something here, right? Or something's not quite right. I like pushing it to do that.
Hmm. And is that like something in your with your colleagues as well, like that you all do that, or that's more like from your perspective, and that's the way you personally work?
So I have a colleague that I'm working with now that we've been testing, right, and we try to push it to do different things, and we feedback to each other, right, because it is a learning process in all of this. Whether it's a data analysis kind of thing, whether it's a pressure testing an idea, whether it's
Hmm.
content, so we feedback to each other,
Hmm.
um, and say like, did this is this still honed in on what we want to accomplish? Is it still talking to the person that we want it to talk to, right? Like, did it kind of veer off the path here a little bit? Um, so it's been interesting, but I think it's better to have colleagues to talk about how you're using it, right? Even if it's from small things to bigger things.
Hmm.
It's possibilities are infinite, right? So it's always nice to hear from colleagues of just how they're using it.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes, I mean, it's it's it gets down a path, and you're just like, no, that's not the path I'm going on. Just give it back to me, and I'm gonna keep cruising here. Because as a creative, right, there's still things that you don't want to take away your ability to create and come up
Hmm.
with ideas. So
Hmm.
sometimes it is nice to step back and go, no, I want to take on this one, and
Hmm.
don't want to use it as much to help.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that happens to me with English, for instance, because my main language is Spanish. So
Yeah.
I've learned English at school, university, and so on, and because my wife speaks English. But uh, AI in general is such a temptation. So I force
Sure.
myself to do certain things first with the tool, so that I can learn how to then do it by
Sure.
myself without the tool in English, especially, so that I can learn. Because if not, then your brain becomes extremely lazy. And I'm a creative person.
Yeah.
I need I need the
Right.
wood,
You
let's
need
say, in my
stimulation.
brain. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very worried about the generations coming out with that, where they get to just jump the step. They don't go through that creation step, that hard,
Mm.
frothy part of just understanding um, how you create. Like,
Mhm.
that's there's so much more tied to it that way, right?
Mm.
You have such a more like ingrained of like you know why you did those things, and then to see it working, you get this feeling of, my gosh, like it came to life, it's working. And I don't know that you get that same effect with something that's AI created, where it's like, okay, it
Mm.
worked for me. I kind of knew it was going to perform well because I vetted all this information, right? It doesn't have that
Mm.
same feeling of accomplishment. Not to say
Mhm.
we should use it, but just, yeah, now I worry about that coming up,
Mm.
just missing those creative steps.
Yeah, yeah.
Important.
It's some. I mean, I don't know if the words are correctly, but creativity is kind of a muscle.
Hmm.
So there are people that are naturally more creative than other people, from an arts perspective, for finding angles and vision and all that. But at the same time, you can learn that.
Hmm.
You build the muscle by practicing,
Hmm.
asking questions, looking for answers, and all that. And it's a process. It doesn't happen from one day to the other.
It's like that.
And AI, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I say it's like athletics. I mean, some people are just very, very naturally gifted in athletic, and some are
Mhm.
some are somewhat athletic, right?
Mhm.
And your ceiling is different, right?
Mhm.
But it's in the end, it's just practice and it's
Hmm.
time out there, right?
Hmm. So I have one last question for you. So this show is called Keep It Personal, and but in your own words, what does keeping it personal mean for marketing leaders today?
I think I'm gonna echo something I said before. Just you're talking to people,
Hmm.
you're communicating with people, and never lose sight of it that it's a human being. Um, because in the end, whether it's a a little pocket card reference guide that helps somebody take do something in the new job that they have, or it's somebody that sees the recruiting thing that you connected with to say like this is a really great company you want to work with, and like there's a person behind that that's looking for that culture, right?
Mhm.
um, that to me is just imagine. And I think one of the ways that we work together, like if somebody got something from our company, right, would they go, oh my god, this is so cool, this is so neat, like imagine those moments of them interacting with it or engaging with it. Like what does that look like? Would they go, "Oh, that's whatever," right? Or they go, huh, that's interesting, I didn't know that. Which is like, what would their reaction be? That to me is just, that's the way you kind of pressure test the things that you're putting out there.
Mhm.
Would it go in the trash? Would it just get scrolled past? Or would it go, huh, that's interesting? Even if it's a
Mhm.
brief moment, that's okay, right? You can build from that. But
Mhm.
don't make for something forgettable. Think about those moments that those
I
people are
love that.
having with what you're putting out there.
Yeah, because in the end, when people feel something, they act.
Yeah.
Mariana, thank you, and to everyone listening. See you in the next episode of Keep It Personal, and do not forget to subscribe. Have a great day. Take care, and bye.
Thank you, sir.